Welcome and thank you for joining this latest episode of Behind the Tapes. It's been quite a few weeks since we last produced one of these programmes. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Glasgow director Peter Frisena. You may have noticed, and we certainly hope that you have, that we've tried to provide some variety in the guests that we bring to you here on Behind the Tapes. And tonight is absolutely no exception. I'm delighted to bring it on screen and welcome newfound friend to TigersPLUS, Eurosport commentator and all-round good guy, Dave Rowe. Good evening, Dave.
Evening, Derek. Nice to be with you.
Thank you very much for giving up some time to talk to us here on Behind the Tapes. Maybe in your instance, I should have changed the name to Behind the Microphone, Dave.
Maybe, yes. That would have been good. Yeah, not too bad, Dave.
Dave, listen, we will talk very obviously about your involvement with Eurosport, etc. But I'd like to just speak to you generally about Speedway and maybe get to understand your sort of wider involvement. And the first thing I was going to ask, in fact, before we even touch on Speedway, is it's been a very difficult year for us all in a number of ways, not least of which not being able to go along and watch live Speedway in the UK. How's life treating you this year? Has it? I imagine, given your line of work, it's been a bit of an issue for you.
Yeah, obviously a very difficult year. I am self-employed, and basically my work is speedway and football. So clearly, for a lengthy period of time, there was no speedway and football taking place. We had a burst of football for about 6 weeks in the summer when they caught up with the season. I worked for a radio station called TalkSport, so got out to quite a few games in that period. Then a quiet spell again now. During August, before that kicks in again, hopefully in September. Obviously, lack of speedway in the UK. The good thing for me was the European Championships took place again throughout July. So it's not been easy. Obviously, well, fortunately, I was able to take advantage of the government scheme, kept me going. The main thing I think for most people has been the change of routine and the fact that we can't do what we're using. And for me, my work is my hobby, and being out 4 or 5 nights a week in the season watching Speedway and working as well at the same time, that's absolutely perfect. So it's been a massive shift to be at home every night of the week. I can't get used to it.
I'm quite sure, Dave, just listening to you, I'm quite sure I'm not the only one on this call listening to you who would admit to being rather envious that you're able to make a living out of, as you just describe it, your hobby and your favourite pastime. Was that always the plan, going through school and onwards?
I have to say, absolutely not. I've taken the most bizarre route to get where I am. For someone that, I mean, I have no qualifications at all in journalism or anything of the sort. I have maths A levels. I have a degree in computer science, and so I end up being a football and speedway reporter and commentator. It makes no sense at all, but it was just the direction I went in. Really, whilst sort of doing a degree and getting a degree at university. Got involved in a lot of stuff outside of that in terms of broadcasting and written work. And it really went from there. Even then, I virtually qualified as an accountant before making the switch about 15 years ago now into full-time self-employment. It was a good decision. It was a bit of a gamble at the time, but it was the right move to make. And yes, you're right. I can understand people would be envious of that. There are long days, long nights, long drives. But yeah, the chance to basically live and breathe sport, watch sport, talk about sport, write about sport. Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity and definitely the right move.
Sounds good to me. I put my hand up and say that I'm exceptionally envious, Dave. Listen, in terms of, let me ask you this question, because some people will be directly interested, and I certainly am. Football and speedway predominantly your bread and butter. Tell us on Behind the Tapes the teams that you support.
Well, I'm based, as you know, in Coventry, and that is very much the case. Always been a Coventry Speedway fan from when I was first taken up there in the, early to mid-80s, I suppose. The mid-80s would be the first era I can recall in Speedway. So Coventry team was the likes of Tommy Knudsen, Kelvin Tatum, John Jorgensen, Rick Miller, that sort of era. And then football, same. Coventry, long-suffering Coventry fan, although we appear to be on the way back at the moment. Speedway was always the passion. football I've always had a strong interest in. But if you, like when I was growing up, if you offered me the chance of going to a speedway or a football match on the same day, it would be speedway. That was the passion. But football has always been very important for me as well.
And you mentioned Coventry, and a lot of people, a lot of members within TigersPLUS have been around long enough to recall the Ochiltree family run club and the big meetings that used to be staged at Brandon British finals and such like. I'm just trying to think of a couple of Glasgow connections. Can you remember Charlie McKenna riding for the Bees?
Very, very vaguely. I think he had 1 year in the early 80s. So yeah, I think he might have had a guested the year before and impressed them, and I don't think it particularly worked out for him in the top league, but I know he had a season. And obviously there would have been the time when it was the all-in-one Premier League in the mid-90s.
Yes.
Glasgow, I think, well, it was the 1 year when of course Glasgow and Edinburgh basically merged.
That's right.
And then I think normality was resumed the following year. So there were a couple of, I seem to recall Brian Anderson had an outstanding meeting up at Shawfield in the mid-90s.
I remember it, and I crave for a return to some sort of amalgamated league. I personally think that might be the way to go, subject, of course, to a fair sharing of riders, but that's a whole other topic, of course. Dave, I know from speaking to you before that like the rest of us, you've got a thirst to go and watch some live speedway, and you mentioned that you had gone along to Scunthorpe recently to see the British Youth Championship round. Were you impressed by the quality of young rider talent on show?
I was absolutely massively impressed with the riders and the whole day. I've been lucky enough to be at Scunthorpe for that, and then with my media hat on, I was able to be at Leicester for the behind closed doors event last weekend. Also, there's further youth rounds to look forward to. And yes, we have got some massively talented youngsters. I've seen Dan and Joe Thompson riding since they were about 7. They've been obviously mascots at both Leicester and Coventry as they've grown up, and the progress they've made is outstanding. Jordan Pagan is a massive talent, and that's in the group of sort of current 16-year-olds. We've got some, even looking at the 125s and the 250s riders who you wouldn't normally see. That's the one, I suppose, the one good thing about what's happened is that these youth rounds have suddenly been given a lot more prominence because they're the only meetings taking place pretty much. So we're seeing riders who we wouldn't normally get to see so much of, and there is some great talent for the future there, and hopefully they'll be nurtured the right way. I think they will with what's in place at the moment. There's a lot to enjoy, and certainly fair play to Scunthorpe and Rob Godfrey for getting that opening meeting on with a crowd in a safe environment. I think everyone had a thoroughly enjoyable day.
Absolutely, and I think Neil Vatcher has to be credited with a lot of the sterling work that he does to harness and encourage the youth. But yeah, it feels like the future looks quite bright here in the UK. A lot of good young talent appearing to come through.
Yeah, well, we see, we see riders that they come through. Some of them fade away if they don't. Some of them will have an ambition to get right to the very top, and if they can see they're not going to do that, they will fade away. But we need the riders who are going to be what you would call regular, consistent, solid league riders as well. Not just future superstars. And I think we have a good progression, a good system in place, which perhaps we didn't have maybe 20 years ago. I think it's been a lot of hard work over the years, going back to people like Peter Oakes and Graham Reeve, and taken on by Neil Vatcher. And we do have a really good structure now with the Great Britain system overall. And these riders can see a progression. And if they've got the talent, they'll be picked up very quickly and they'll be brought into the system. And then it's up to them to make the right choices in life and in their careers when they are 16, 17, take those right moves forward. And hopefully several of them will.
Indeed. Dave, it would be remiss of me, given your location and your affiliation to the Bees, not to ask you about some recent news. I read something, I think only this week, if not last week, that appeared to be freshly positive that there may be some chink of light in terms of, I guess, resurrecting the speedway setup, at least at Brandon.
Yeah, I'm heavily involved, actually mega heavily involved in the campaign to bring the club back, or bring the stadium back for both the speedway and for stock car racing. Along with photographer Jeff Davis, who has seen his work in the Speedway Star and other publications, very, very involved in it. And yes, we've lived and breathed it for 3 or 4 years, the closure and so on, the battle to block the planning application. And yes, it's absolutely correct to say that there is an offer on the table from a businessman, a credible businessman, a multi-million-pound turnover company who wants to buy the stadium and resurrect it into a sporting facility, because it's in a terrible state with the vandalism that's taken place. And obviously it comes down to the owners, who we suspect would rather not admit that this offer's on the table, because if they do that, then it rather defeats their narrative that nobody wants to run there. They're trying to form that narrative in their applications to say, no one wants to run the sport here, there's no need for it, therefore let's change this site into a housing estate. The fact there's now an offer on the table gives them a problem, because if they are seen to reject it or accept it, it's happened, then a lot of their previous documentation goes by their wayside. So it's all a bit of a tactical battle, and we've been quite prominent in the last couple of weeks with statements coming out, and we'll attack what we need to attack, which is quite a lot of their documentation. We're in it for the long haul, no question about that, because Coventry needs the sports. Absolutely massive here, both sports, big crowds. You mentioned the big events over the years, and still, even to its final season in 16, still getting good crowds. So that fight will go on for as long as it takes.
No, that's great to hear, Dave. And and us Speedway fans and promoters and backers have got to be ultra resilient, in modern times, because planners, etc., don't tend to favour motorsport, certainly within city bounds, etc. So very pleasing to hear that you and Jeff and all of the team down there are doing all the right stuff. If I was to ask you just to, do you feel increasingly confident about the current situation or the emerging situation?
We feel confident that what we have achieved is we've basically blocked the existing planning application, which has been on the table for 2.5 years without any sign of it being heard by a committee. But of course, you can block and block and block all you want. It doesn't actually reopen the stadium, and we need people at the council and elsewhere to basically stand up and say this is wrong and this needs to be sorted, a common will, if you like. And we're seeing it. We can't afford, as a sport, we can't afford to lose more venues. We see them closing for various reasons. But what we've noticed in the documents, and we look at the documents relating to, for example, Lakeside, even Stoke recently, and what tends to happen is these developers make a particular statement, they don't get challenged, so they just get repeated in other clubs' applications on the stadiums, and that is a big problem. So the fact that we've gone through the Coventry one in absolute minute detail and pulled it apart for all the untruths that are there about the sport, hopefully that will help in the future. We've been talking to Sport England about it, along with people at the British Speedway Promoters. There is a genuine feel that we can hopefully move this forward, but we obviously, as a sport, we don't want to lose more tracks. We've seen Rye House go, we've seen Workington go for different reasons. The pandemic is going to cause issues. Hopefully all these stadiums will come back, but it's a concern, and we need to be growing the sport, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, keep up the good work. More power to your elbow, and we'll watch that story as it develops. And please, and this is a genuine offer, if there's anything us as a group of Speedway fans who I'm quite sure would be keen to travel and spend money in the Coventry, if we can do anything to help the cause, please reach out to us, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. That's been one of the massive, almost surprises, but the offers of help of skilled and unskilled labour to come in and help rebuild that stadium, it really confirmed to us, what that stadium means to not just the people of Coventry, but everyone who went to a big event there over the years knows what Coventry was and what it still could be.
We've been very fortunate, as you will be very well aware, as Glasgow fans, given recent events. But we've been at the lean end of financial health, etc., and we've had some very lean times to get to the position that we're now in. So very empathetic to every club fighting to keep going, Dave. Dave, I was going to ask you about your sort of wider involvement in the sport. Am I correct? And apologies if I'm not quite on beam here. Am I correct in saying that you have some involvement within the BSPA or the press side of things?
Yeah, very much so, and have done for a number of years. I hooked up. It goes back to when I started at Coventry, which was in 2002, and that came as a result of actually writing an unofficial club website for a number of years. This was really when when websites were only just coming on board. And I'd written, again, back at the university days, I was writing an unofficial website. Eventually I got invited on board at Coventry to do it on a more official footing. And that was a gentleman called Mike Berry, who was at the time very much involved in the journalism side. That then allowed me to connect with Nigel Pearson, who was running the BSPA press office at the time. And yes, very much so. A team of 4 or 5 of us now, probably expanded a bit actually with the increased social media. I'm involved in a lot of the stories you see on the main website. Come from me. I deal with the media on a daily basis with keeping the news going, which is not always easy in times of a pandemic like this. But dealing with results and reports and details. It's a busy role, and hopefully once we get some meetings ridden again, then that can continue. But yeah, very rewarding, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good. And of course here in Glasgow we have the Lanning family, Phil and Taylor, of course, who are also involved in, I guess, in that wider team. I think, Dave, you've got no reason to remember this, but I think I may have spoken to you on the odd occasion. I'm going back about 6 or 7 years. When I was a director at Glasgow, one of my jobs at the end of the meeting was to phone in the result. And I think you might have been on the end of that line a couple of times.
I'm sure that would have been the case, because ever since the year 2003, my responsibility has generally been to cover results on Saturdays and Sundays. And for people who don't know what that means, basically once every track has finished their meeting, it's their responsibility of somebody at that track, normally an incident recorder or a, as you say, an official, a director or whatever, to ring the press office, take us through the result and the finals, all the rider individual scores, so that we can then get that out onto the websites and to the national media. So yes, if you were doing that job of phoning in, then yes, I was on that phone. I think with Glasgow, it tended to normally be Michael Max. But if Michael wasn't there, or he was busy on the centre green, or celebrating a victory or something, it may well have been you.
The other thing I was going to ask you, David, if you don't mind, and I'm not trying to put you in a difficult position, I promise, but from the inside, if you like, you I guess have to put a few fires out in terms of BSPA and different events that happen. Are you increasingly encouraged by, I guess, some of the emerging strategies and activities that the BSPA are now masterminding?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very unfortunate for the current 5 directors that having been appointed, if you like, and it was a big change last winter at the top table, they've been stuck with a year like they've had, because there were a lot of good things coming on, and not just the TV deal, which is very positive, but they are talking in terms of league sponsorship and a lot of stuff, grassroots stuff as well. So it was it's been very encouraging, and that's not to go against, be accused of corporate speak or whatever. It's not to go against what's happened before, because everyone who's up there is making their best effort to do something good. You talk about fighting fires and whatever, and I'll tell you the time when I had the biggest clash in my career, and that was the winter of 2010 and 11. Commonly known in the sport as the winter of discontent, which is when Coventry and Peterborough walked out of the AGM in protest at regulations that were going to come up for the following year. So how can you be the press officer of Coventry and also an integral part of the British Speedway press office at the same time? It was an interesting challenge, but we got through it.
You managed to get some sleep despite the challenge.
Yeah.
And I must ask, because most of our members, most Speedway supporters in the UK will be more familiar with you as the voice of Eurosport, or Speedway on Eurosport, I should say. And how did that come around? How did you make the step into, I guess, sports commentary, or certainly Speedway commentary?
Well, certainly in terms of Speedway commentary, I've been doing football commentary for a while. Speedway commentary, I hooked up with a good friend of mine, is a guy called Pete Barringer, who is responsible for a lot of the work you see on the British Speedway website in terms of rewind videos, that sort of thing, streaming coverage. Pete is responsible for a lot of that content. He was the regular in-house filmer at Coventry for a number of years. I think it was 2004 when we got together and said, "Well, I'll do the in-house DVD commentary at Coventry." Did that for a number of years. Great fun, really enjoyed it. Did a few other bits and pieces. Did a bit of work for BSI a few years later when they needed an extra commentator for some of their bigger events. And also Terry Russell did a streaming project with the Polish League as well, going back 7 or 8 years for the playoffs. Did that. And then we heard in 2014, it was 14, that Eurosport were going to be taking the Swedish League, which they did in the end for 3 years. So I contacted them over the winter when we heard about it, just put my name forward, got a reply back saying, thank you for your interest. Didn't really think anything more of it. Season started. And Eurosport started the season with a commentator alongside Sam Ermolenko, a commentator called Jack Bernicle, who's a very well-respected motorcycle commentator, works on MotoGP and all sorts, still does for Eurosport. And then, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks or so into the season, they decided that it wasn't working. Speedway is it's a sport where if you're not living and breathing it all the time, maybe it doesn't work out. And Jack, as I say, is a really good MotoGP commentator. But for whatever reason, Eurosport decided they wanted to make a change, and they rang me up and said, any chance you can start in, what was it, about, I think they gave me a couple of weeks because Jack was actually booked for a couple more meetings, which was absolutely fair enough, keep him on. And they said, well, can you come and work with Sam? And so we did it, and that was how it was. We did Sweden for 3 years, and what I hadn't realised at the time was that would also open up the European Championship and the other events such as that. So there's best pairs and under-21s all came from that. So that was how it started. That was back in 2014.
And you mentioned your sidekick in commentary, Mr. Ermolenko, and I've met Sam. He's come to Glasgow once or twice for supporter events, and I know he's a bit of a talker, as most Americans tend to be. But how do you find working with Sam, given he's been there, done it, and had the T-shirt, of course.
And that is the thing. Yeah, really enjoy working with Sam. He's the one thing, first of all, as a commentator. One thing you want is someone who doesn't give short answers. For example, if you watch a race of the European Championship, and you'll see what happens is I'll call the result, and then it will go into replays, and Sam will talk over all the replays. Now, whilst he's doing that, quite often I'm not actually watching the replay myself. That's when I'm on the computer sorting out what that result means, what the scores are, what's going to happen for the next race. So the last thing you want is a co-commentator who's going to just stop after 5 seconds and leave you wondering what else to say whilst you're trying to sort out the program or the commentary. So that's great. And then working with him in terms of travelling, Sam, as you say, has been there and done it. He's travelled Europe and the world for years and years. He's a great driver. I think I'm a good navigator. So we get around Europe okay. And then when you get to a venue, normally everyone knows Sam, whether it's riders or officials that he's come across, 20, 30 years ago. Everyone knows him. It opens doors. He gets information that we wouldn't normally get. So yeah, absolute perfect sidekick.
And you've anticipated my next question, which is, in normal times, you and Sam are even more fortunate to be able to travel around Europe and be in person at each of these meetings, and that's obviously not been the case in 2020. And I just wondered how additionally difficult that's made it for you.
Well, funnily enough, I mean, the first couple of years, which was 14 and 15, we did all these meetings from the studio in London. So basically TV screens, and that's all you had. TV screen of what the viewers were seeing and a separate TV screen of the track. And that's what you're commentating from. So basically what the viewer sees, you see. Then at the start of 2016, and it was literally days before the first meeting, which was in Torun for a pairs meeting, I got this email which said, well, we're actually now thinking of actually sending you and Sam out to the venues to do the commentary. And I'll say it was probably 10 days before. And so at that point, there was a mixture of excitement, because it's a dream job. Go abroad, commentate on Speedway. Fantastic. And also a bit of trepidation, because you start thinking of all the things that might go wrong, both in terms of travel and just anything that might happen when you're out there. Now, anyone who's travelled Speedway would know that certainly Torun, which was that first meeting, absolutely ideal, because it's the easiest place in the world to get to. You can fly into 2 or 3 airports, but certainly Big Gosh is only half an hour away. So it was an ideal start. But I do remember that first, we only had it confirmed, I think, about 4 days before that we were actually going to do it out there. So I recall doing a meeting at Coventry on the Friday night and then driving straight to Stansted. And when you get that early morning alarm call at 4:30, there's this sort of that thought of, what on earth are we doing here? But then when you actually get out there and you do it, it's absolutely been the highlight of my career, to go out see all these places, to work at different venues, to see the different tracks, fantastic stadiums, new countries. I would never have dreamt of going to Russia. Been there twice now. Latvia, Germany, you know, the list goes on. It's been fantastic. And so, yes, to go back to this year, unfortunately, we had a 5-round series of the European Championship and a great effort by One Sport to get it on and get it run. But obviously this year we were back in London, unfortunately, couldn't travel. The first couple of rounds, the quarantine was still in place. So we absolutely couldn't travel to and from. And then about halfway through that got lifted, but the policy, and quite understandably, the policy of the TV company was that their commentators would not travel. So we stayed in the UK. But fingers crossed, in future we'll be able to return.
Good. But it just interests me when you roll up to these tracks, especially the new ones that you've never been to before. Who do you report to, and is there a bit of a variance in terms of how welcoming they are, or how hospitable they are to you?
Normally we're very well looked after by the organisers. Certainly the arrangement to go out there and do the commentary is very much a joint one between the organisers and Eurosport. It works for the organisers to have commentators on site doing an international feed. It means they can gain access to the material a lot easier. They can use it for their own PR purposes. So in that respect, it makes it easier in terms of getting to the places, because there'll normally be somebody there to at least give us the accreditation, get us into the venues, everything we set up for us. So pretty much once, and again with these major events, once you've got the wristbands and the passes, then you can get to where you need to get to. So that's not been a massive problem. And although I don't speak much Polish, but when you've been there quite a few times, you pick up a few key phrases. So it's not been too bad, actually. As I say, it's the kind of thing that once you've done it 2 or 3 times, and having someone like Sam with you, who people will recognise anyway, just follow him basically, and he'll take you where you want to go.
He opens the doors for you.
Yeah.
In terms of Speedway commentary, as opposed to football, can you what's top of mind if I asked you for your most memorable or perhaps even proudest moment in Speedway commentary terms?
Funnily enough, I mean the one recently with Robert Lambert winning the Euros was a great moment, because obviously it's British success. Technically, obviously we're commentating for an international audience, so we're not totally biased. But I mean, I must admit my bias did come through on that. So that was a good moment. There was a finale in 2016. We're actually very lucky in the European Championship. It often boils down to a big finish. And so that puts some pressure on, because you have to be following the meeting enough to know when the key moment might be that it might get won, so you can call that moment at the right time. We had Nicky Pedersen winning it at Rybnik in 16 when he was 9th going into the meeting, the last round.
Yep. And
it was a crazy meeting in which literally anyone could have won it. The scoreboard just changed around all night, and eventually Nicky won it in the last race. And last year we went to Horzov, and it went to a runoff between Mikkel Mikkelsen and Grigori Laguta. And again, it's keeping track of the scoreboard to know that if he does this, then that might happen, and there will be a runoff. Not help when you're trying to talk to a director when you're in an ad break, saying, "I believe that there could be a runoff here," and the director might be saying, "Oh, we don't know about that." So you have to trust your information. Yeah. And very fortunate. You may have heard me and Sam. We referenced something called Candysoft.
Yes.
Sam's always done it when he was on Sky. And Candysoft is a gentleman called Dave Gambrell, who is a whiz with spreadsheets. And he's constructed this masterly program that the FIM use as well, that basically you input the race results, it will input you all the scores, the positions, and sort out your countbacks. So what that means is that even during a race, halfway through a race, you can input the result or the likely result and see what that's going to do to the score chart. So that's absolutely crucial. And when you have big moments like, as I say, Pedersen coming from nowhere to win, or the possibility of a runoff, or Lambert, the way he did it in that last round in Torren, that creates the memorable moment, because you know it's coming, and you can call it, especially at that right time.
If I flip the question, Dave, what would be your least memorable or the moment that you would most like to forget?
Oh, I don't know. I have to think about that one. I don't think I've had any absolutely enormous clangers. I get annoyed. I think any commentator would tell you the same. If you call anything wrong, so if you call a wrong rider or a wrong position, then you beat yourself up about it. I watch back every meeting I do. I watch it back. I see things that I've done well. I see things, that could have been a lot better. I don't think I've had any enormous errors of getting mega scores wrong or calling the wrong results. So in that respect, it's not been too bad. But I think there's always a chance to improve. And I will tell you a funny story from the first year, and that'll be the year when, or 16, the first year we went out to the meetings, and that'll be the meeting that we very nearly never got to, and that was this meeting at Rybnik, final decider. And we flew out in the morning from Luton to Katowice. Weather forecast was dreadful, and plane was delayed. So we were delayed about 4 hours, landed in Katowice about 2:30, pouring rain, and Sam had got a text from someone very high up who said, meeting cancelled, postponed, will now take place tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So we thought, no surprise, it's absolutely pouring with rain, no rush, went to the hotel, agreed a time to meet up to go and get a bite to eat, nothing at all. And then spent an hour or so in the hotel, and I was looking at social media and websites and whatever. The rain was still coming down, but easing a bit. And I suddenly thought, there's actually nothing here which says this meeting has been called off. And it was getting to about an hour before the meeting started. And so I rang Sam and I said, Sam, look, no one's actually told us. There's nothing on a website or on Twitter or whatever. This meeting actually hasn't officially been called off yet. So we thought we'd better jump in the car. And we were about 20 minutes away from the stadium. And we got there, and true enough, we found utter chaos because while some of the organisers had felt that it would be called off, the rain was easing, and the jury had said, no, you'll relay this track and this meeting will go on.
Wow.
So it wasn't quite as tight in the end because they did delay it by an hour or so to do the track work. But yeah, if we hadn't been quite on the ball there, we'd have responded to this text we'd have been on a night out in a restaurant somewhere whilst this meeting was taking place. So that would have been the most embarrassing if we'd actually gone to Poland and not gone to the meeting.
Really, that was a close call, Dave.
Very much so. Yeah.
Listen, I've got to ask because I'll not be forgiven if I don't. Have you ever highlighted to Mr. Ermolenko that it's not called a streetaway in Europe?
No, I don't. I don't think. I think everyone who commentates has got their own phrases, their own expressions, and I think that's the case in pretty much any sport. And a straightaway is very much an American term. You hear it all the time if you watch NASCAR, IndyCar, whatever. It is an American terminology, but no, everyone's got their own style, and you work together as a partnership. If somebody makes an error in terms of calling a race or a result or something, actually the technique is not to draw attention to it, but to sort of correct it in an appropriate way, and that's what I hope we do. Absolutely.
Dave, you'll be aware, having popped up on TigersPLUS a couple of weeks ago to announce our August activity for members, that a number of brave souls, not a high number, but a number of brave souls did actually make some submissions. We made an attempt to commentate on a heat at Glasgow from 2019, and I wonder together. Let's have a look at those. Let's have a look at those now, actually, and I'll just gauge your initial thoughts after this.
Riders come to takes. Craig Cook's on the maximum again. There's a surprise. Takes up. Wilson's made a good start, but Jensen gets there. Jensen loops. It's clear. Takes the left at the back for the first time, but here comes his fast player. Winds it on round outside. Passes Lawson. Tigers now sitting a 5-1. Jensen has a look over his shoulders. He's Cook's there. Tigers are clear, but Lawson's still on the tail. Here comes Lawson. Winds it on round outside. You don't see that every day. He's going to pass the two Tigers out in the one move. But Cook's not finished. Lawson comes back and switches up the inside. Cook goes in, but Lawson now passes into the third bend. Cook switches back to the inside. Can he get the run on Lawson down to the first bend? No. Cook switches to the outside. To the private right wing defence. Slingshots down the inside of Lawson into the third bend and takes the lead. Tremendous ride there by Cook. And it's going to be Cook that takes the win. Tigers take a 4-2, and that gives them a 4-point lead to take down to Arlington for the second leg. So there you have it then, that's the night finished for today. big job for the Tigers to defend that lead down at Arlington, and will be heavily dependent on our heat leaders. You can be sure they'll have plenty of fight in them and will take it to the Eagles down there. On a side note, great ride by the pairing of Cook and Jensen. Perhaps they could be ones to watch out for the pairs in September.
Heat 15 of this pulsating championship semi-final first leg. 2 points in it, Tigers 2 points up, and the tapes are up, and it's Rasmus Jensen makes the lead. Cook takes care of Edward Kennett on the inside, and he's going round Richard Lawson, so it's a 5-1 after the first lap to the Tigers. This would give them a 6-point lead to take down to Arlington, and the Tigers look comfortable, but no, wait a minute, here's Richard Lawson goes round the outside, and has it gone through? No. He could come back here, yes, and Lawson's going into the lead. The Tigers duo left the door open, and Richard Lawson accepted the invitation. 1 lap to go, and Lawson's in the lead, chased by Cook and Jensen, but Cook's not finished. Cook backs the inside off the second end, and Cook's gone into the lead. Cook looks as if he's going to win this race, and Cook has won it. Lawson comfortable in second, and Jensen in third. So that's a 4-2 for the Glasgow Tigers. That gives them a 4-point lead to take down to Arlington at the second leg. And here we see the early part of the race where Craig Cook goes round the outside and joins Rasmus Jensen, his teammate, in the lead. And here we have Lawson. He knows this track very well, having been a Tiger for a number of years. Takes the lead and held the lead quite comfortably until the last lap. Second bend, Craig Cook, his usual cutback, and takes Richard Lawson on the inside and goes on to win the race. As the two team number ones come round to acknowledge the applause of the fans, Craig Cook has a 15-point maximum tonight, 15 points from 5.
So, Heat 15, Eastbourne versus Glasgow. Cook, Kennett, Jensen, Lawson. Here we go. Jensen gets off to a good start. Cook getting pushed wide by Lawson. Can Lawson get in front of Jensen? Nope, not quite. So Cook now on the outside. He gets past Lawson. Looks like he's going to get past Jensen as well. So Cook goes from 4th to 1st in the space of a lap. Can the two Tigers keep Lawson behind? Lawson looking for a way through here. Lawson now going back to the outside line. He takes the outside and he's past both Tigers. Looks like Lawson is keeping in front, but is Cook going to run him wide? Yes, he does, but Lawson goes for the switchback up the inside of Cook. Jensen looks to go up the inside of Lawson. However, Cook's in the outside line, no, but Lawson stays there. Cook looks to come up the inside on to the last lap. Cook has it all to do. Cook goes for the outside line, switches back to the inside and goes up the inside of Lawson. Will Lawson have anything to come up by? Cook goes wide, keeps Lawson up the inside, and it's Cook. Cook takes the win, followed by Lawson and then Jensen. It's a 4-2 for the Tigers. Kennett struggling at the back there, nowhere to be seen. Excellent race, excellent. Heat 15 at Ashfield. That gives the Tigers 47 points to 43, a 4-point advantage now to take down to Eastbourne. So here's Cook and his favoured outside line. Straight through, he had lots of drive there, almost got past, in fact he did get past both, and there's Lawson going for the switch up the inside, in between the two Tigers. Lawson very familiar with the Ashfield track, but not so much the new wider track. Lawson just can't stay out in front. Cook goes to run to the outside and then switches right back through the inside, keeping Lawson on the outside. What a final race that is, and it will certainly make for a good second round tie. Lawson and Cook. Cook taking the maximum score on the night.
Cook, Jensen, Kennett and Lawson. Starting whistle walks away and off they go. Cook's off to a flyer. Nope, it's Jensen. Jensen is just in front of Lawson, followed by Cook. Cook swoops round the third bend, fourth bend. That's a 5-1 for Tigers. looking great. Lawson's right on the tails. Lawson makes a audacious move round the fourth bend and takes the lead. Amazing stuff from Richard Lawson. Cook and Jensen both come back at Lawson. Lawson just ahead. What a race this is. It's fantastic stuff for the fans. Cook's chasing Lawson. The match is in the balance. Cook's up the inside. Wow, what a move. Lawson's still making efforts at the line approaches, and it's Cook, Lawson, Jensen. Kennett dropped off. What a result. 4-point victory for Tigers, but what a race that was from Richard Lawson.
It's Glasgow 43, Eastbourne 41. Green lights on, tapes up and they're off. And it's Rasmus Jensen, it's the first one to the first bend. He's got Richard Lawson the inside, Edward Kennett the outside, Craig Cook lean left. Oh, and he's making his way past Edward Kennett, now round Richard Lawson. Right round Rasmus Jensen, and it's Craig Cook, it's first. Unbeaten record here at Ashfield, he's still trying to maintain that. He's looking for his teammate, Richard Lawson, he's a fan's favourite here. Working his way right round. Oh, and he's past Rasmus Jensen. Is he going to make it past Cook? Cook's looking for him, he's on the outside. And Richard Lawson's been pushed to the outside. Craig Cook still looking for his teammate there. And Richard Lawson has made it through both Tigers. He's got the Tigers by the tail. Craig Cook onto the last bend. The last lap. Keep going, Cook. We're on it. Richard Lawson's looking for him. Cook's still trying to maintain his broken record, unbeaten. Oh, and Craig Cook has made it. It's a 4-2 for Tigers. We've heard of the Russian Rocket. At Glasgow, we've got the Cumbrian Comet. Well done, guys. It was great racing. Speedway at the top draw right there.
Heat 13, only 2 points separating the sides. The lineup from the inside: Lawson, Jensen, Kennett and Cook. Who's going to show first to the first bend? Rasmus Jensen gets there. Craig Cook relegated to the back. Kennett and Lawson split the Tigers pairing. Not for long. Craig Cook now swooping around the outside. Look at this turn of speed by Cook. And he rounded Lawson and Jensen. Tigers on a 5-1 into the second lap. Richard Lawson now head down. He won't let the Tigers pairing get away. The Eagles only 2 points down on the Tigers with just these 2 heats to go. Look at Lawson repeating the feat of Cook on that first lap. And Lawson's gone to the front. Craig Cook, Rasmus Jensen and Lawson. What a tussle between these 3 riders. Lawson still at the front, pulling away now from the Tigers pairing. 1 lap remaining. Craig Cook now chasing down Richard Lawson. The 2 Cumbrian riders locked together. Cook now the inside of Lawson into the final turn. Can Craig Cook hang on for a Tigers win? Yes, he can. 4-2 to Glasgow in Heat 13. Tigers stretched their advantage to 4 points. That was an incredible 4 laps of Speedway here at Ashfield in Heat 13. Richard Lawson and Craig Cook quite rightly congratulate one another. Look at this in replay now. Early on, Craig Cook sweeping right round the outside line of the 4th turn. Richard Lawson repeated that feat. He took the same line to do exactly the same to the Glasgow pairing later in the heat. Before Craig Cook, once again, the King of Ashfield of course, chased down the former Glasgow number 1 and King of Ashfield. Craig Cook passing Richard Lawson up the inside on that final lap. The crowd, quite rightly, receiving these 2 riders with some well-deserved round of applause. But it's Glasgow 4 points to the good now, with just 2 heats remaining.
43 points to 41 to Glasgow. So we're looking for a good start from the Tigers here, which is Rem Andlitz away, and Rasmus Jensen is taking the lead at the first bend. Into the second bend, Craig Cook is on going high into the dirt along with Richard Lawson. Craig Cook is just taking the lead over the second bend, going into the second heat. And here goes Richard Lawson going high round the bend into the boards, and he's still staying high, trying to keep into the dirt. Craig Cook is now into second place along with Rasmus Jensen in third. Edward Kennett has kind of faded away. Craig Cook is now taking over the lead, and we have a good, and there we have it. Craig Cook the winner, 3 points. Richard Lawson 2 points, and Rasmus Jensen. And Rasmus Jensen finishes off with 1 point, so it's a 4-2 to Glasgow in the final round.
So Glasgow leading 43-41, last heat decider. Lawson inside, Jensen gate 2, Kennett gate 3, Cook gate 4. Here we go, tapes are up, and it's an even break. Jensen hits the front, Lawson second, Edward Kennett third, and Cook surprisingly at the back. But here comes Cook along the back straight, past Kennett, high into bank in 3 and 4, and they've passed the last heat-born pair to join Jensen at the front, so it's on a 5-1 into lap 2. 5-1 to Glasgow. Cook leading, Jensen second, but Lawson's looking pacey. He goes high up in the banking, 3 and 4, trying to get round Cook. Cook notices him, but no, he can't block him, but he has. He's blocked him, but Lawson cuts back again and takes Cook on the inside, and Lawson's into first place. So what a magnificent race this is. I don't think Cook's finished though. He's going high into bends 1 and 2, and he's cut back, and he's inside Lawson the back straight. Is he past him? Yes, he is. So Cook hits the front. Lawson stays inside to see if he can get him on the run to the line, but no, it's a Cook victory. 3 points for Craig Cook, 2 for Richard Lawson, 1 for Rasmus Jensen, and it's a 4-2 to Glasgow. What a magnificent final race. So that's Glasgow winners on the night, 47 points to 43. Here we go, just having a look at Cook going high into the 3rd and 4th bend to join Rasmus Jensen at the front, and again Cook blocking Richard Lawson's attacks, but Lawson cut back up the inside and took Craig Cook again, but obviously Cook not finished, and he lined up Richard Lawson in the first, coming off the 1st and 2nd bend, going up the back straight for the final time. There we go, up the inside to secure the victory for himself, and a 4-2 for Glasgow, and an overall 47 points to 43 victory over the Eastbourne Eagles. A great end to a great meeting.
There we are, Dave. I don't think you've got anything to frighten you or keep you awake at night. No serious rivalry here within TigersPLUS, but credit to everyone for having a go, Dave.
I would absolutely give everyone credit for having a go. And I said at the time when I announced it a few weeks ago, it's a bit of fun. It is not easy, and I, no bones about that whatsoever. And the first thing is to actually hearing the sound of your own voice. It can be difficult. You don't often sound like you think you sound. So there's that. There's also the pressure of thinking you must not put a word out of place, and quite often in live commentary you do put a word out of place, and it's how you actually recover from it that's the issue. So yeah, fair play to everyone who had a go. The more and more you do it, the more and more you gain what I would call almost stock phrases, and sometimes stock phrases get laughed at. People talk about bingo cards of commentators who say the same thing time and time again, but it's true, and there are things you say, and there are things that you use that you know you can say whilst you're mentally thinking about something else at the time. That's how it is. So to step in and do it just as a one-off first go, well done to everyone. And yeah, fair play, absolutely.
Thank you, Dave. I know that was the first time that you've heard those entries, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time after this conversation to just assess them in a little bit more detail, and we'll look forward to your announcing your top two, the best two attempts, I guess. And now we're able to actually to look at, because you were kind enough not only to judge us, but you were kind enough to have a go and show us what it might have looked like. Let's have a look at your own commentary now, Dave.
Oh dear, here we go. So Glasgow in front for the first time, heat 15, Richard Lawson in white off the inside, Jensen red off gate 2, Kennett yellow off 3, and the unbeaten Craig Cook in blue off the outside. Heat 15 gets underway, it's a good start by Rasmus. Jensen in red gets above Richard Lawson into the first bend, and Jensen leads, but Cook has been forced out by Kennett, turns back off the second bend, and Cook moves through into third place. Tigers on a 4-2, in fact they could be on a 5-1 because Cook's gone round the outside of Lawson, and he's gone round Jensen as well, and Cook hits the front. It's Cook from Jensen with Lawson third, and Glasgow on a 5-1 in this Heat 15 trying to extend that lead up to 6 points in the final race. Cook leads from Jensen, but Lawson's not finished yet. He's making the move around the outside, and in fact Lawson's come from third to first. He's got past Jensen, he's taken back out by Cook, and Cook still rest leads. Jensen trying to come back toward the inside, and Lawson's got in between them again. Brilliant stuff by Lawson to lead, and Eastbourne here will be delighted with a 3-3. Cook is trying to hit back now, turning back off the fourth bend with 1 lap to go. It's Lawson from Cook, Jensen third, Kennett at the back, and Cook is so wide off Benton, then turns back sweetly, and Cook shoots down the inside and gets the better of Lawson, and then wide again off turns 3 and 4, and it will be a 15-point maximum for Craig Cook, who wins Heat 15 from Richard Lawson. Rasmus Jensen third, Kennett at the back. It's the same result as when these four met in Heat 13, but what a race it was, and Glasgow will take a 4-point lead to Arlington for the second leg of this Shield semi-final. But dramatic stuff there in Heat 15, with Craig Cook forced out in the early stages, getting past Lawson on turns 3 and 4. It looked good for a 5-1 at that stage to extend that lead to 6, but Lawson, fair play, he would not be denied. He came charging back, went in between the two Glasgow riders, and then it was all about Cook, Craig Cook, reeling back in and complete that maximum. He went so wide on turns 1 and 2, he almost kissed the air fence there off turn 2, in fact, turned back on Lawson one more time, and that took him through on the inside into the third bend. Brilliant race to finish off the meeting. Craig Cook and Richard Lawson both take a standing ovation from the Ashfield crowd, and will that 4-point lead be enough at Arlington for the second leg? What a great race it was. Final score, Glasgow 47, Eastbourne 43.
Now that was much more professional and much more composed and much more controlled.
Well, thank you for saying so.
To be fair, it was quite an interesting heat. There was lots going on, and lots of things worth commenting on that crammed into that 60 seconds. But thanks very much, Dave, for showing us just how bad we actually are. But listen, Dave, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us, and indeed to act as our mentor and judge. And maybe in the fullness of time we might look to repeat this episode again. So thanks very much for befriending us here at Glasgow within TigersPLUS, and we look forward to watching you more in action on TV.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you very much. Wish you all well up in Glasgow. Hope you, as with everyone, get back next year. Funny enough, I've not been to Ashfield. I was going to be coming this year with the GB match that obviously got called off. So it's a trip I want to make in the future. I hear great things about it. See, great pictures of Glasgow. So really look forward to doing that in future. So fingers crossed, everyone. Keep safe, and let's hope we see proper Speedway back in 21.
Thank you very much, and people at home, thank you for taking time to watch this episode with Dave and I on Behind the Tapes. Look after yourselves. Speak to you soon.